Well, it seems, I mean, there are quite a few benefits for a program like this, but I mean, there are concerns from a lot of activist bodies that, you know, this could be a hindrance to our environment and to our country as a whole. So could you tell me what are those benefits and those limitations that nuclear power and nuclear plants could do to our country?
I always hear people mentioning the environment, and nuclear are actually considered, or it should be considered, as a green technology. A nuclear power plant that's operating has no effect on the environment whatsoever. Of course, when you do have an accident and you don't control it and you don't manage it, it could be detrimental to the environment. I think we'll come to it a little bit later, but the technology of the new plants that we're using actually are designed to prevent such events. So really, in terms of the environment around a nuclear plant, there's really no problem whatsoever. When we also look at the natural resources in South Africa, we actually have an abundance of uranium in South Africa, which is a byproduct sometimes of the gold mining sector, as well as being mined on its own. So it actually does help us to utilize the natural resources of the country quite extensively. Of course, like anything else, it needs to be managed very well so that you don't harm the environment in your mining industry while you mine these resources. And I think that's something that's very important to all of us in the nuclear industry. I am personally a very strong activist for environmentally friendly solutions. And for that, nuclear becomes a big part of that.
All right. Well, it appears, you know, there are things that are put in place to make sure that this is done safely and for the environment. So could you please let me know, do you think South Africa is ready for such a commitment? Do you think that we have enough resources to go on this trillion-dollar project?
Well, I actually think we can't afford not to do it. First of all, of course, it is going to take a lot of resources, but we have to remember, when we talk about a R1 trillion project, we talk about 9,600 megawatts of nuclear power that will be generated. This we're not referring to one single project or one single plant. That'll be between 6 and 8 nuclear reactors that will be commissioned starting in 2023 up to 2030 over a long period of time. So it will be between 6 and 8 smaller projects really that you can break it down into. Personally, I believe it's the perfect size to really get a cost benefit out of it. If you do a once-off project like this, it's going to cost a lot, but with every increment that you do, then it will become cheaper, as well as you will build your local expertise and your local industry that will supply this project. So I'm actually very excited to see what will happen when we start with the very first project. Our involvement as South Africans in the project, I'm a big supporter that we should take ownership of these projects. With assistance from the international community, of course. And as we go along with more plants, our involvement in the project, our local involvement, will grow. And I think by 2030, we should have a well-established industry again, like we had in South Africa. When I go out, and I often do, and I speak to people at the International Atomic Energy Agency or international universities, I'm often surprised at how much expertise and skills we have in South Africa. We do have a limited capacity because the industry is not as big as, for instance, in the USA or in France or in South Korea. But that's something that we need to build. In terms of expertise, we're not one step behind the international community at all.